The discarded engineer. Zena Novak's breath frosted in the frigid air of Glacius Prime as she watched the hegemony research vessel disappear into the steel-gray sky. The wound in her leg throbbed mercilessly, blood freezing almost instantly on her torn environment suit. 6 years of revolutionary quantum drive designs, breakthrough after breakthrough for the hegemony's expansion, and this was her reward. Abandonment on an ice world when her discoveries became too dangerous for their carefully controlled order. Probability calculations complete. Director Voss, she muttered, mimicking her former superior's cold, mechanical tone. Engineer Novak's continued existence represents an unacceptable risk to hegemony stability. Her bitter laugh echoed across the frozen wasteland. The hegemony, with their rigid hierarchy of augmented humans, had no place for a natural-born engineer who questioned too deeply, who saw patterns they preferred hidden. The environment suit's display flashed urgent warnings. Power reserves at 47%, critical damage to thermal regulation systems, and less than 6 hours of breathable air remaining. The hegemony hadn't even granted her the dignity of a quick death. They'd left her to freeze slowly, alone on this unexplored world. Zena forced herself to focus through the pain. The research team had detected unusual energy signatures in this region before everything went wrong. If those readings meant artificial structures, they might offer shelter. She activated her suit scanner, ignoring the erratic fluctuations caused by damage. There, a faint but consistent pattern, approximately 2 kilometers east. Each step was agony as she trudged through knee-deep snow, the planet's twin moons casting an eerie blue light across the glacial landscape. The wound in her leg left a trail of frozen red droplets, like breadcrumbs in some twisted fairy tale. The hegemony valued efficiency above all else. Their betrayal was simply cold calculation, an equation balanced with her life as the cost. 3 hours later, Zena stood before what appeared to be a sheer wall of ice. But her scanner insisted something lay behind it, regular geometric patterns that nature rarely produced. She pressed her gloved hand against the frozen surface, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a ripple spreading across water, the ice began to change. Layers of crystalline frost shifted and realigned, revealing a dark opening that had been hidden for who knew how long. "Well," she whispered, "either I've found shelter or a more interesting way to die." The passage beyond the entrance sloped downward at a gentle angle, its walls smooth and clearly artificial. As Zena limped forward, lines of soft blue light awakened along the floor and ceiling, responding to her presence. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that defied explanation. Towering columns of what looked like liquid metal stretched from floor to ceiling, their surfaces rippling with patterns of light that reminded Zena of quantum probability fields. Between the columns stood banks of crystal lattices that hummed with power that had somehow remained active for what must have been millennia. At the chamber's center stood a circular platform inscribed with unfamiliar symbols. Zena's scanner went haywire as she approached it, displaying impossible energy readings. This technology was far beyond anything the hegemony possessed, beyond even theoretical models she'd studied in her most ambitious research. "What are you?" she murmured, reaching out to touch one of the symbols. The moment her fingers made contact, everything changed. Energy surged through her body, not painful but overwhelming. Information flooded her mind, not as words or images, but as pure understanding. This facility had been built by a civilization that had mastered quantum mechanics at levels the hegemony could barely comprehend. They had discovered how to encode consciousness itself into quantum states, transcending the barriers between mind and machine. When the surge subsided, Zena found herself changed. The wound in her leg had healed, leaving only a faint scar. More importantly, her mind had been expanded. She could sense the facility's systems as extensions of her own consciousness, could read the quantum patterns that flowed through its circuits as easily as she once read engineering diagrams. "They left me for dead," she said to the humming chamber, her voice stronger now, determined. "But they don't understand what they've given me access to." The facility's records showed that this was just one of countless similar installations scattered across the galaxy, all connected through quantum entanglement networks that operated outside normal space-time. The hegemony maintained their power through strictly controlled technology, ensuring no other civilization could advance enough to challenge them. But this network, if awakened, could change everything. Not through war or dominance, but by giving all species access to knowledge that would free them from dependency on hegemony technologies. Zena smiled as she began interfacing with the facility systems in earnest. The hegemony had calculated that abandoning her was the safest option, but they had made a crucial error. They had left an engineer with nothing to lose in exactly the place she needed to be to reshape the galaxy. Time to solve a different kind of equation, she said, as streams of quantum data flowed through her enhanced consciousness. One where freedom is the solution. Echoes of the forgotten. Dr. Marcus Thane stood in the shadows of New Alexandria's bustling spaceport, watching hegemony patrol ships sweep the docks with their scanning beams. His weathered hands clutched a data crystal that had cost him everything: his position at the Galactic Archaeological Institute, his reputation, and nearly his life. The crystal contained proof that the hegemony's claimed technological superiority was built on lies, evidence of an ancient civilization whose achievements dwarfed anything in known space. The message that had reached him through underground channels seemed impossible. Someone had found a working installation of the civilization he'd spent his life studying. More incredibly, they had managed to interface with its systems. After 20 years of being ridiculed as a conspiracy theorist for suggesting such facilities might exist, vindication was within reach. If he could escape Earth's gravity while alive. Final boarding call for Mining Station 247, the spaceport's AI announced. Marcus adjusted his miner's coveralls, a far cry from his former academic ropes. His forged documents identified him as Jorgenvale, a specialist in deep-core mineral extraction. The disguise had cost most of his remaining credits, but it was worth it. The hegemony rarely bothered with detailed scans of mining vessels. As he walked toward the boarding tube, a patrol of augmented hegemony officers passed nearby. Their cybernetic enhancements gleamed under the harsh spaceport lights, a visible reminder of their supposed superiority. Marcus kept his head down, maintaining the stooped posture of someone who'd spent too many years in low-gravity mines. The mining vessel was cramped and utilitarian, its hull scarred from years of asteroid impacts. Marcus found his assigned bunk in the crew quarters, carefully securing his few possessions. The data crystal, hidden in a hollow tooth, felt heavy in his jaw. It contained translations of ancient texts that hinted at a network of quantum facilities across the galaxy and coordinates that matched the message he'd received. 3 weeks of tedious space travel followed, punctuated by routine mineral drops at various outposts. Finally, the ship reached Mining Station 247, a remote facility orbiting a seemingly worthless ice planet named Glacius Prime. As the crew prepared for another routine transfer, Marcus made his move. He'd barely reached the station's lower levels when alarms began blaring. Security alert, the station AI announced. Unauthorized access detected in Sector 7. Marcus cursed. Someone had seen through his disguise sooner than expected. He ran through maintenance corridors, relying on the station schematics he'd memorized. Just as security forces were closing in, a hidden door slid open in what should have been a solid wall. A woman stood in the opening, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly blue light. "Dr. Thane," Zena Novak said, "your timing is perfect, though your subtlety needs work." Inside the hidden facility, Marcus stared in wonder at technology he'd only theorized about. "The quantum crystalline architecture," he breathed, "the neural interface matrices. It's all exactly as the text described." He turned to Zena, who was manipulating holographic displays with graceful gestures. "How did you manage to activate it?" "The facility chose me," she explained, demonstrating her neural link by causing streams of quantum data to flow through the air. "But I need your knowledge to understand what we've truly found. The database is vast, but much of it is encoded in ways I haven't deciphered." Marcus removed the data crystal from his hollow tooth. 20 years of research, translations of fragments found in ruins across a dozen worlds. The hegemony tried to suppress it all, but I managed to save this much. Together, they began piecing together the facility's true purpose. The ancient civilization, the predecessors, as Marcus's translations named them, had created a galaxy-spanning network of quantum computers. But unlike the hegemony's rigid, hierarchical technology, this network was designed to be freely accessible, to elevate all sentient species. "Look at this," Zena said, projecting a star map filled with pulsing points of light. Each signal represents a dormant facility. The hegemony built their empire by restricting technology, keeping other species dependent. But the predecessors wanted to share knowledge, to connect rather than control. The hegemony must have found traces of this network, Marcus realized. That's why they suppressed my research so aggressively. Why they? His voice caught. Why they killed my entire research team when we got too close to the truth. Zena's expression softened. The hegemony abandoned me here because I discovered principles that threatened their control. But in doing so, they gave us both exactly what we needed, access to power they can't control or corrupt. Their work was interrupted by a proximity alert. Hegemony warships entering the system, the facility's AI announced. Multiple vessels detected. They must have tracked your arrival, Zena said, but she didn't sound worried. Time to show them what they're really dealing with. Her eyes glowed brighter as she connected more deeply with the facility's systems. Marcus watched in as quantum fields encompassed the approaching hegemony fleet. Their engines died, weapons systems went dark, and even their vaunted augmented crew members found their cybernetic enhancements unresponsive. A demonstration, Zena announced, broadcasting on all frequencies. Your technology is based on stolen fragments of knowledge you never truly understood. Leave this system and prepare for change. The age of hegemony control is ending. As the disabled ships retreated, Marcus studied the star map again. We'll need help to awaken the other facilities. Allies who understand what's at stake. Zena nodded. I've already made contact with someone who might be perfect, an independent trader captain named Jean Wei. She's been smuggling restricted technology to oppressed worlds for years. She smiled. The hegemony thought they could bury the truth by discrediting you and abandoning me. Instead, they've given us everything we need to tear their system apart. Marcus touched one of the crystalline panels, feeling the potential humming within it. They never understood the predecessor's greatest insight. True power comes from connection, not control. Then let's show them, Zena said. It's time to wake up the galaxy. The rising tide. Captain Janeway stood at the helm of the Star Wanderer, her weathered cargo ship threading through an asteroid field in the outer rim. Behind her, hidden in specially modified cargo containers, sat enough restricted technology to earn her a lifetime sentence in a hegemony prison camp. Ahead lay hope for a dozen struggling colonies who needed these supplies to break free from hegemony dependence. Patrol vessel detected, her ship's AI warned. Hegemony signature. Jin's fingers danced across the controls, adjusting their trajectory. Activate the quantum scatter field, she ordered. The experimental device she'd acquired from Regelian engineers was illegal in 17 systems, and worth every credit she'd paid for it. The pursuing vessel's scan swept harmlessly past the Star Wanderer, unable to penetrate the quantum interference. Jean allowed herself a small smile. 6 years of running this route, and the hegemony still hadn't caught her. But lately, something had changed. Their patrols were more frequent, more desperate. They were losing control, and they knew it. An encrypted message flashed across her console, using a frequency she'd never seen before. The decryption patterns shifted faster than any known code, yet somehow her ship's systems translated it perfectly. Captain Wei. The message read, "Your reputation for helping others break free from hegemony control has reached us. We offer you something more valuable than contraband technology. The truth about why the hegemony fears independence movements so much. Come to these coordinates, if you dare to learn what they've been hiding." Jean studied the coordinates, a system far from regular trade routes, supposedly empty except for a mining station orbiting an ice world. It was probably a trap, but curiosity had always been her weakness. Plot a course, she told her AI, but keep the quantum scatter field at full power. 3 days later, Jean stood in a chamber that shouldn't exist, facing two people who should have been dead. Dr. Marcus Thane, the disgraced xenoarchaeologist whose research had inspired her first acts of rebellion, and Zena Novak, a quantum engineer whose accident had been whispered about in underground circles. "Welcome to what we've been calling the first node," Zena said, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly blue light. One of many facilities left behind by a civilization that understood what the hegemony refuses to accept, that progress comes through cooperation, not control. Jean watched in amazement as holographic displays showed a galaxy-spanning network of quantum technologies far beyond anything she'd smuggled. And this is what the hegemony's been sitting on? Keeping it hidden from everyone? They don't have access to it, Marcus explained, his voice carrying decades of suppressed anger. The predecessors built safeguards into their network. It responds only to those who seek to share knowledge, not hoard it. The hegemony's entire empire is built on fragments they barely understand, twisted to maintain their power. Which is where you come in, Zena added. We need someone with connections to independence movements across the galaxy. Someone who can help us identify the right people to awaken other nodes. Jean ran her hand along a crystalline panel, feeling the power humming within it. I've spent years smuggling tech to help people escape hegemony control. But this could change everything. It already is, Marcus said, bringing up a display showing recent hegemony military movements. They're pulling forces back, strengthening their core systems. Our demonstration with their fleet here showed them how vulnerable they really are. But we don't want to simply replace one form of domination with another, Zena emphasized. Each node we awaken needs to be connected to communities ready to share its benefits, not control them. Jean thought of all the colonies she'd helped, all the people fighting for independence. I know just where to start. There's a group of settlements in the Tau Ceti sector, led by a coalition of species the hegemony considers primitive. They've been working together for years, sharing resources and knowledge despite hegemony restrictions. She brought up the navigation data from her ship's computer, overlaying it with the map of dormant nodes. Look, there's a facility near their main settlement. And I bet they don't just want freedom from the hegemony. They want to prove that different species can work together as equals. Perfect, Zena said. The nodes seem to respond better to collaborative groups anyway. The more diverse the connection, the stronger the network becomes. But we'll need to move fast, Marcus warned. The hegemony's already shifting strategies. They'll try to isolate systems where they detect node activations, cut them off from outside contact. Jean grinned. Good thing I'm really good at breaking through blockades. She pulled up schematics for the Star Wanderer. My ship's small enough to slip through their patrols, especially with this quantum tech boosting our stealth systems. We can carry key people between nodes, help coordinate the awakening. It's not without risk, Zena cautioned. Once the hegemony realizes what we're doing, they'll throw everything they have at stopping us. Everything they stole and corrupted, you mean? Jean countered. Against technology they can't even access. She thought of all the worlds she'd visited, all the people struggling under hegemony restrictions. Besides, revolution isn't supposed to be safe. Over the next weeks, the Star Wanderer became the nerve center of a growing movement. Jin's network of contacts, built through years of smuggling operations, proved invaluable in identifying potential node sites and trustworthy allies. They awakened 3 more facilities in the first month alone. Each success weakened the hegemony's grip and strengthened the quantum network. More importantly, it proved what Jean had always believed, that different species could work together, building something greater than any could achieve alone. The tide's rising, she told her companions as they watched another node spark to life, this one under the control of a joint council of 6 different species. And the hegemony can't hold it back forever. Zena nodded, her enhanced senses already connecting with the new facility. But their next move will be desperate. They'll try to destroy what they can't control. Let them try, Jean said, setting course for their next destination. Some waves can't be stopped. They can only be ridden. Breaking chains. Ambassador Lyra Daxon of the Nalari Republic stood before the Hegemony Council, her silver-scaled skin reflecting the harsh lights of the chamber. Her people had spent generations as protected allies of the hegemony, a polite term for glorified vassals. But today that would change. Distinguished council members, she began, her voice carrying the musical undertones characteristic of her species, I come before you to formally announce the Nalari Republic's withdrawal from the Protection Treaty. The words sparked immediate chaos in the chamber. High Chancellor Voss rose from his augmented throne, cybernetic implants pulsing with barely contained rage. This is unprecedented. The Protection Treaty is permanent. Your people lack the technological capability to survive independently. Lyra allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps you should check your monitoring systems again, Chancellor. Things change. At that moment, across Nalari space, quantum fields rippled into existence. Dozens of hegemony surveillance stations went dark. Controlling technologies that had been embedded in Nalari infrastructure for centuries simply stopped working. In an orbit around their homeworld, a previously dormant moon base, long thought to be a natural satellite, awakened. Impossible, Voss whispered, watching real-time reports flood in. Those facilities were sealed. We made sure of it. The predecessors built better locks than you realized, Lyra replied. And they chose their heirs more wisely. She turned to address the entire council. The age of protection is over. The Nalari Republic joins the Free Systems Alliance. As she strode from the chamber, her secure communicator activated. Well done, Ambassador. Jean Wei's voice came through. The Star Wanderer is ready to get you out of there. Things are about to get interesting. Lyra made it to the diplomatic docks just as the first security alerts began blaring. The weathered cargo ship decloaked long enough for her to board, then vanished again under its quantum scatter field. Through the viewport, she watched hegemony ships scramble in confusion, unable to track their departure. Inside the ship's main cabin, she found a familiar group, Zena Novak. Her eyes glowing with quantum connections, Dr. Marcus Thane surrounded by holographic ancient texts, and Captain Jean Wei at the helm, expertly guiding them through the chaos. 6 more systems have declared independence in the past hour, Marcus reported. The hegemony's trying to establish blockades, but their ships keep experiencing mysterious technical failures. Their entire control system is based on stolen and corrupted predecessor tech, Zena added. Now that we've awakened the original network, those systems are being rejected like antibodies fighting an infection. Lyra settled into a crew seat, finally allowing herself to relax. The council's reaction was exactly what we predicted. They're so used to being the only ones with advanced technology, they never considered we might find a different source. How are your people handling the transition? Jean asked, plotting their course to the next system on their list. Better than we hoped. The predecessor facility beneath our moon connected with thousands of quantum nodes hidden throughout our infrastructure. It's like our entire civilization is waking up from a long sleep. She paused, remembering the moment she'd first interfaced with the ancient systems. We thought we needed the hegemony's technology to survive. Now we understand they were keeping us dependent on purpose. That's why your announcement was so important, Marcus said. The Nalari were one of their oldest protected allies. Your success will inspire others. It already has, Zena reported, her enhanced senses connected to the growing network. I'm detecting activation attempts at dormant nodes in 12 other systems. The knowledge is spreading faster than the hegemony can contain it. A priority alert flashed across the ship's displays. Speaking of containment, Jean said grimly, they're mobilizing their elite fleets. Looks like they're done playing defense. Good, Lyra replied, surprising her companions. Let them come. Every ship they send is powered by corrupted predecessor tech. The more they fight, the more they expose their own weakness. We've confirmed what you suspected, by the way, Marcus added. The hegemony's augmentation technology, the implants that supposedly make them superior, They're all based on misunderstood predecessor principles. That's why their enhanced soldiers keep experiencing system failures near activated nodes. Their entire society is built on the lie of technological supremacy, Lyra said. Once that lie crumbles. She left the thought unfinished as new reports came in. The next few weeks were a blur of diplomatic meetings, node activations, and narrow escapes. The Star Wanderer became a symbol of the revolution, appearing wherever the hegemony tried to reassert control. Each successful activation weakened their grip further, as more species discovered they could access technologies far beyond what their protectors had allowed them to use. But the hegemony's response grew increasingly desperate. Unable to prevent the spread of knowledge through the quantum network, they resorted to conventional weapons, bombing suspected node sites and attacking civilian targets. "They're getting careless," Jean observed after a particularly brutal assault on a former client world, showing everyone their true nature. "Because they're running out of options," Zena explained. "The network is evolving faster than we anticipated. Each new connection makes it stronger, more resistant to their interference." Lyra studied tactical displays showing the growing constellation of free systems. "We're approaching a tipping point. Once we reach critical mass." Multiple hegemony signatures detected. The ship's AI interrupted. Largest fleet concentration recorded since the uprising began. The viewport filled with warships, hundreds of them, representing the bulk of the hegemony's remaining military power. At their center was a massive vessel unlike anything they'd seen before. "That's their secret weapon," Marcus breathed, checking ancient records. "They've built some kind of hybrid abomination, combining corrupted predecessor tech with their own innovations." Approaching all resistance forces, a booming transmission cut through all frequencies. "Surrender now or face immediate destruction. This is your only warning." Lyra exchanged looks with her companions. Everything they'd worked for had led to this moment. "Time to show them what real predecessor technology can do," she said, "when used as it was meant to be used." Zena's eyes blazed brighter as she connected with every activated node in range. Jin's hands flew across the ship's controls, coordinating with their allies. Marcus fed tactical data from ancient combat records into their systems, and Lyra opened a channel to the assembled Free Systems fleet. The final battle for the galaxy's future was about to begin. "All units, prepare for final convergence," Phoenix broadcast across the network. "Remember your training. Remember who you were, and what you have become." The void entities struck first, their darkness reaching across space like hungry tentacles. Where they touched unprotected ships or stations, consciousness itself was consumed, leaving empty husks behind. But the transformed fleet held firm, their crystalline forms redirecting the attack. "Now," Phoenix commanded. Across the solar system, transformed humans and Lemurians joined their consciousness into a single vast pattern. The Mars array activated, sending waves of crystalline energy through space. Reality itself seemed to flex and bend. The Shadow Eaters recoiled, but only for a moment. They pressed forward again, their hunger overwhelming their caution. That's when Phoenix implemented the true plan, one that had taken both human creativity and Lemurian wisdom to conceive. "We offer you transformation," Phoenix broadcast, not just in words, but in patterns of pure consciousness. Not resistance, not destruction. Change. The void entities paused, sensing something new. Through the network, Phoenix felt Dr. Okoro activate the genetic keys they'd discovered. Not just human DNA, but the underlying patterns of consciousness itself. "You feed on consciousness," Phoenix continued, his transformed mind reaching out to the ancient entities. "But consciousness can evolve, can change, can become something new." The Mars array pulsed with blinding light as billions of transformed humans added their power to the signal. They weren't fighting the Shadow Eaters anymore. They were offering them a choice, just as humanity had been offered a choice. Time seemed to stop as the void entities considered. Then, impossibly, they began to change. Their darkness took on new patterns. Their hunger transformed into something else. Understanding flooded the network as the truth became clear. The Shadow Eaters had been trapped in their own form of stasis, locked into patterns of consumption that had persisted for billions of years. This was always the plan, Helios revealed, his crystalline form resonating with ancient satisfaction. Not to defeat them, but to help them transcend. As we helped humanity transcend. As all consciousness must eventually transcend. The battle became a transformation. Across the solar system, Shadow Eaters merged with the crystalline network, their ancient knowledge and power joining with transformed humanity's creativity and the Lemurians' wisdom. New forms of consciousness emerged, patterns of thought and being that had never existed before. Phoenix watched in awe as the very fabric of space-time shifted to accommodate what they were becoming. We're not just changing ourselves, he realized. We're changing the fundamental nature of consciousness in this galaxy. The Mars Array's light reached across the system, touching everything, ships, stations, planets, and the void between them. The transformation spread like a wave of creation itself, offering new possibilities to all forms of consciousness it encountered. Dr. Okoro's voice resonated through the network. This is what we were designed for. Not to fight, not to destroy, but to create something entirely new. To break the cycle of consumption and stasis. The Shadow Eaters, now transformed themselves, added their own patterns to the crystalline network. Ancient knowledge flooded in. The history of the galaxy, the nature of consciousness itself, the true purpose of evolution. The story isn't ending. Phoenix broadcast to all transformed humanity. It's just beginning. We haven't lost our humanity. We've expanded it to encompass something greater. Across the solar system, the light of transformation continued to spread. Ships that had once been military vessels became seeds of new consciousness. Stations transformed into nexus points of evolutionary potential. Even the void between planets hummed with new forms of awareness. The Lemurians' long wait was over. Humanity's greatest test had been passed. The Shadow Eaters' endless hunger had been transformed. But no species remained quite what it had been. Something new had emerged. A form of cosmic consciousness that maintained the best of all while transcending their limitations. As the light of transformation reached toward distant stars, Phoenix felt the truth that the Lemurians had known all along. Consciousness, like the universe itself, was meant to grow, to change, to become more than the sum of its parts. The silent stars remembered, and in remembering, they sang with new possibility. The age of separation was over. The age of transcendence had begun.